Bonjour à tous. Buenos días a todos. And good morning, everybody. So, the ICAJE is the association that promotes in-nation pedagogy in the different Jesuit schools in Europe. Its aims are to encourage networking, cooperation, and exchanges between Jesuit educational institutions. It gathers different members, as you can see on this slide. The 20 delegates, 14 Jesuits out of 20, the Secretary for Education, Father Mesa, the President of the Conference of European Provincial, Father John Gladys, an Irish Jesuit, and it is ruled like an international association with a steering committee and a council. The 20 European and Near East provinces belong to ICAJE with 157 schools, and they work for 162,000 students. Let me show you some statistics. 3 areas compound the ICAJE. The 3 areas correspond to the Jesuit assistances. Central and Eastern Europe with 16 schools, more than 9,000 pupils. Austria, Croatia, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Lithuania, Poland North, and Poland South. Western Europe, with 62 schools, more than 67,000 pupils. Belgium North, Belgium South. Egypt is in Western Europe for us. France, Great Britain, Ireland, Lebanon is in Western Europe too, and the Netherlands. That's the Jesuit logic. Southern Europe with 79 schools, more than 84,000 people. Albania, Italy, Malta, Portugal, and Spain. Of course, you can note a great variety of sizes. 10 schools in the UK with about 5,500 pupils. 15 schools in France with about 21,000 pupils. Spain, with 68 schools, represents half of the population of ICAJE. What are the educational strengths? This variety in sizes is also found in the characteristic of the region. I think our strengths lie more in our variety than in our differences. If we think ICAJE as a mosaic, we can project lots of positive aspects that make our wealth. So a mosaic is made of many colors. We have committed people. Most heads, vice principals, deputy heads, members of staff are very committed people. If I told you that most delegates were Jesuits, most heads are lay, men, or women, and they have a very strong conscience of their mission. The cultures and traditions that makes our schools Jesuit are still very strong. But like everywhere, I think, we need to train the new members of staff to the Jesuit tradition. The languages. The languages are also our strength, since they oblige us to pay attention to the other, to make sure we understand each other well. More than 15 different ones. The school systems. You won't be surprised. The school systems are almost impossible to compare. Some schools receive subsidies from the government. The teachers are paid. Others, they don't. And they are going through very difficult time these days, like in Italy, for instance. But I can tell you that the conscience, the will to follow and to implement the characteristic of Jesuit education are the same everywhere. What enables us to work together is Ignatian pedagogy. Whenever we organize a meeting or a conference, we know that we have to focus on the source, on Ignatian spirituality. We have to focus on this spirituality first if we want to have a common substratum. Our challenges. They are numerous, of course, but let me give you three important ones: hope, creativity, and mission. Hope is the theme we have chosen, and we want to decline in all our meetings and conferences. Not only because we want to forget the crisis that crosses Europe these days. We know that many experts can analyze it very well, but because we think that it is the duty of Jesuit education to give hope to the young generation, either teachers or pupils. Hope is life. Hope is faith. Creativity. We have to strengthen the Jesuit European School Network. We are here to think of it as a global network. But the difficulty is that we should not forget the local realities. So creativity is for us the key to reflect upon new ways of proceeding, as Father Mesa just told you. We have to take also into account the new technologies that can help us. Mission. We want to deepen the link between Ignatian pedagogy and Ignatian spirituality, mainly at a time when the lack of Jesuits is the reality in most of our schools. Only 259 Jesuits are really working in our 157 schools, and not always full-time. 6 training centers have been founded in Europe for ongoing formation. We need to support them. We know that our mission is also to work in a multicultural, multi-religious environment, and that the pastoral or the religious education can't avoid this context. So the training centers have an important mission to transmit our tradition, to make it alive. Our challenges are also our vision for the future. But concretely, to implement its objectives, ICAJE organizes meetings, conferences at the European level. We gather secondary heads, primary heads, or pastoral leaders. The next 2 conferences will be for deputy heads, vice principals, since we believe that their task is a very heavy one, and that most of the time they are at the heart of the school, struggling between teachers and pupils, between pupils and parents. They need some time for themselves. The primary heads also enjoy meetings, sharing their realities. So they are often amazed of the point of confidence they discover. So to conclude, I'd like to welcome all the Europeans here. There are 58, having decided to make a break in the middle of their holidays. And they wish to share with you all people from the whole world, to share their realities. So this is the best proof of their commitment. And you can see that ICAJE is really lucky to work with them. Just 1 second. Yesterday, I was telling a delegate that we were only 7 European ladies. And he answered me, well, you know, since a woman is worth 3 men, I think the European delegation is much more numerous. So that was nice. Thank you.
As we just came back from our congregation procurators in Africa, there's one main theme coming to us is there is no one Africa culture. And the same, I want to repeat it, there's no one Asian culture. Okay, that's only for convenience. In Asia, for those countries which has Jesuit schools are listed here: Australia, China, Indonesia, Japan, Philippines, and East Timor. Like for example, Korea doesn't have any Jesuit school, secondary school. That doesn't mean that it does not exist in the conference. So in the conference, we have a total number of schools 34. Number of students 51,460. And number of staff altogether is 3,634.5. That 0.5 is a half-time Jesuit. not that he's half-time Jesuit, he's working as half-time. If it's counted all half-time Jesuits, it would be more. Okay. There is great things happening to us because we are in the conference which has both developed so-called economies and developing economies. There are areas where we have trying to have schools, and which I will cover a little later. And this is a blessing for us because it gives us hope and challenges and opportunities and platform for us to cooperate with each other. And this is the great thing. So, for example, we just finished the Student Leadership Network, and there's the first initiative. It's an initiative by Philippines. It's a great thing, which I've just heard some raving reports from our students and teachers who participate there. So different countries, like there are 5 countries, five provinces now involved in this as a pilot program. And the Advanced Teachers Program, thanks to the generosity of Riverville, Australia, teachers from the conference, the different provinces, regions, provinces can come. They have come to at least 2 times. How to promote Jesuit education, how to help our teachers become Jesuit educators, Ignatian educators. And they have even come out, the team from Riverview, they came to Hong Kong and Manila to help us. As you know, it's very expensive going to Australia. It's cheaper for the team to come to Hong Kong and Manila. And they're very generous. They use their summertime to help us. And then we have the IPP workshops in EAPI. This is especially for Myanmar and East Timor, to help them the teachers and the regions, the Jesuit regions, to really groom them into the art of Jesuit education, pedagogy. And then Japan province also, they send the teachers to EAPI. So this is collaboration. The main challenges. Now, of course, our main challenges are not unique to Asia Pacific. Certainly, I think we find that in other conferences too. But it's impacting us. For example, there are shortage of Jesuits evolving in our Jesuit schools. And the younger Jesuits, they don't seem to have much interest in education. They would rather go for spirituality and maybe teaching theology. And that's a big challenge. And because of this shortage of Jesuit involvement, it means that we cannot provide adequate training or formation for lay collaborators. And this is particularly eminent significance in cultures which is not Christian, not Judeo-Christians, in secular cultures such as in China, Japan. So most of our lay collaborators are not Christians. They don't share the Christian faith. So how do you form them, especially with inadequate Jesuit involvement? Also, we have like the impact of urbanization across Asia Pacific. The traditional spirituality, the traditional values are being replaced by hip hops and other type of cultures, Western cultures. And we're seeing like traditional Catholic cultures, Catholic countries like the Philippines and even Australia, the mass attendance and are dropping, vocations are dropping. Okay, so how do we communicate our faith to our young people? The usual format of catechism, of teaching education in classroom, the languages that we use are no longer effective. I think more challenging for us is how do we celebrate Eucharist? It's a big problem, big challenge for us in this type of culture. Before I go to the new projects, I also want to say language. In Asia, as you say, there's no one common culture, there's no one common language. But if we want to collaborate together, we need to have a common language. And English seems to be the more possible language, yet is still not fully acquired by all the regions and provinces and by our schools, teachers and students. So that really limits our collaboration, discourages. Okay, so that's somehow a problem that we have to be very creative to overcome. The new programs coming up, I'm an interim person. Not interim Jesuit, but interim person. Because we're still looking for a new secretary for education in the conference. We're all very busy people, and that's the big challenge now. What to let go and what to pick up. And then we have, in East Timor, we're starting a school. Actually, there are two parts. One is for training teachers, one part is for secondary school. And there are other possibilities. We're looking into other education initiatives in Cambodia, in Thailand, and other areas. So you see that there's a need coming out like from these areas that they want Jesuit education, Jesuit schools. And we need to be creative and discerning how to offer in what mode, what methods, what type of schooling, education. And that's what we need to work on.
I represent Africa. I represent JESA. JESA means Jesuits of Africa and Madagascar. And I work as the secretary to JESA, or the secretary of secondary education to JESA, Jesuits of Africa and Madagascar. And Jesuits of Africa and Madagascar is made up of 7 provinces and 3 regions. We have the Northwest Africa Province, Central Africa Province, Zimbabwe Province, East African Province, Zambia, Malawi Province, West Africa, French-speaking province. We have Rwanda, Burundi region. We have Mozambique region. And we have the South Africa region. And as you know, Africa is very varied in its contexts. And when we look at the context of Africa, it's interesting. We cannot have one language. It's a huge continent. And some of the Jesuit secondary schools in Africa are situated in urban, middle class, professional, and affluent contexts. while others are located in small towns, rural, unskilled, and poor areas. And the contexts of our schools affect our schools, as you will know. And we have to look at the context critically. The other thing is we look at the school fees. The schools located in affluent contexts and are fully owned by the Society of Jesus charge fees as high as $6,000 per annum per year, whereas schools in small towns and rural settings charge as little as $36. You can see the disparity in the school fees. Ownership of our secondary schools. Most of our secondary schools are owned by the Society of Jesus. They are easier to run and they are the best performing of the Jesuit schools. But some of our schools are categorized as public schools. What does that mean? It means that those schools, even though they are run by the Society of Jesus, government have some sort of control over what goes on in those schools. Such public schools, the state or the government pays the salaries and often employ and fire the teachers. Where the state pays the salaries of teachers, it also determines the school fees students pay, and sometimes the school fees can be very low in such areas, and sometimes those schools find it difficult to really run the schools effectively because the school fees are quite low. These are the statistics. I think we share the same statistics with Southeast Asia. I think if you look at that critically, as at the last count, a number of schools are coming up now. One school is coming up in Zambia, Malawi province. A school is coming up in Nigeria. A school is coming up in Dodoma. As you look at the statistics, you see the number of schools in each province and region. We have a total of 35 schools, 24,338 students, number of Jesuits 146, Jesuits, other religious 31, faculty 1,773. Basically, that is the statistics of the schools, secondary schools in Africa. Now we go to the main challenges we face in running these schools. As you know, finance is always a challenge, it's always a problem. Since we do not get any financial assistance from the government, sometimes we have to rely on the tuition. Even in the schools where government are supposed to pay salaries, salaries never come. And when the salaries come, they are usually very little. And so sometimes these schools have to find ways to supplement what the government gives or pay the salaries so that we can keep the teachers. So this kind of schools, you see the government saying you can't increase school fees. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to run such schools. So fundraising for new projects and scholarships is a big challenge for us. Secondly, staff development and staff formation. Due to lack of resources, financial and personnel, Jesuits and lay staff do not get enough staff formation in IPP and Jesuit education. It's a critical challenge for us. First, we have very few Jesuits involved in secondary education, and the Society of Jesus, I would say, is still young in Africa. And young Jesuits are coming up, but they need to be developed, they need to be formed, as well as the lay people that collaborate with us. As you know, political instability is also a problem, it's a challenge for us in Africa. And prolonged political crisis in some areas, in some countries, certainly affect school policies negatively. Jesuit personnel, as I've mentioned earlier, in our secondary school are still very few. So maybe very soon we'll be appealing to Europe and America to send us people to help us. Strength is not all gloom and doom. As you may think, we still have some strengths. We still provide quality education. Our schools still provide excellent all-round education. Some have become model schools that other private schools learn from. Contextual needs. They also pay attention to the contextual needs of the places they are located. For instance, we have had situations where schools had to spring up in particular places. In northern Uganda, for instance, where war had ravaged people and we have a lot of child soldiers, they've been able to respond. It's like Jesus has been able to respond to the needs of the children there by providing a school. Also, Colloquium has started a few years ago to start educating some of these children that were child soldiers and the need to have quality education in that. So we pay attention to the context where our schools are established or located. We have model students. Our students are highly self-motivated and disciplined. I worked in a school in Nigeria, in Abuja. A lot of schools in Europe, universities in Europe and America seek after our students because they are high-performing students. About 80% of the students get scholarship. To some extent, it's not good for us, but rather extent, they are able to develop their talents and their gifts. So we have model students who are highly motivated and disciplined. Major new projects. The regions of Mozambique and Rwanda are planning to begin secondary schools in the next couple of years. Central Africa Province has plans to establish a secondary school in Angola. Angola is now under the Central Africa Province, that is Congo Democratic Republic. Some provinces are setting up full-time education teams, education offices, and pedagogical centers. They are also looking for funds for these new projects. We have established an office of education, we call it JSAM-E, Jesuits of Africa and Madagascar Education, and I am the secretary, and we are trying as much as possible to network at regional level, at province level, at the assistancy level. So those are projects we are looking to help us move schools and bring Jesuit education to the fullest to our assistancy.
Good morning. So in the United States and Canada, there are 82 schools, most of them in the U.S. These 82 schools are from 25 states, plus the District of Columbia, the country of Belize, because the Missouri province has a school there, and 3 schools in Canada. You can see from the relative statistics that the Jesuit network of schools in North America is the largest network of Catholic schools, although there are a significant number of Catholic schools in the U.S. The Jesuits maintain the largest network, the oldest of which, Georgetown Preparatory, was founded in 1789. The youngest, the Cristo Rey Jesuit Preparatory School of Houston, was founded in 2009. Of those 82 schools, we educate about 56,000 students, and we partner with almost 6,700 lay persons in doing that, with 250 Jesuits. I'd like to talk a little bit about our educational strengths. Collaboration has been a large piece of who we are as schools in North America. beginning with the foundation of the Jesuit Secondary Education Association 41 years ago. But as of this moment in time, I think one of the major strengths for our collaboration is that in North America we have one language. It's easy for us to collaborate because we can communicate without having to do multiple translations. That single language makes it possible for us to do many things here, and we have taken advantage of that over the last 40 years. Right now, one of the things that's happening is that the 9 provinces in the U.S., at least, are going through a process of restructuring. By 2023, those 9 provinces will be 4 provinces. And one of the questions that keeps coming up, and Father Mesa brought that up this morning, is Jesuit identity and mission. So the provincials recently approved a process for sponsorship review, wherein a school does a self-study in relationship to a document that the provincials have created called What Makes a Jesuit School Jesuit. And they're asked to assess themselves, and then a visiting team comes and reviews that self-study. And then the province enters into a sponsorship agreement with the school, and the provincial recognizes the school as a sponsored work of the Society of Jesus. One of our other educational strengths is that over these 40 years since the Jesuit Secondary Education Association began, there has been significant Ignatian formation available for faculty, for staff, and for governing boards. Some has been done at the local area, in the schools themselves. Other formation has taken place at the regional level, at the level of provinces. And the JSEA has offered significant national opportunities for ongoing formation as well. So really, the crux of who we are as schools in North America is related to the Jesuit Secondary Education Association, which began over 40 years ago, as a collaboration, an initial collaboration of schools across the U.S., and has continued in that spirit of collaboration throughout its history. We do have some challenges, and those challenges are significant. As Emmanuel spoke of the cost of education in Africa, it's also a question of cost in North America. None of our schools receive federal funding or local funding in the way that faculties are staffed. We get some federal funding in some of our schools for technology. So affordability and accessibility, look at it. We should be also challenged to provide some kind of order of studies for our lay partners, so they have opportunities for ongoing formation. The challenge of tomorrow's leaders and providing them with leadership training and succession planning, how to move from one leadership or one head of school to another head of school, is a challenge. It lets go or changes a culture in a school often when the head changes. And finally, I think one of our challenges is remaining Jesuit and Catholic in a context of a changing demographic. As Father General has said, as Jose said this morning, the secular world in which we live is a challenge to us to remain Jesuit and Catholic. And it's also a challenge to us because we have fewer Jesuits who started these schools, and we have to rely, and we're challenged to rely on our lay partners to do this work. In light of that, we have begun a process of creating a pilot program for a new model of governance and service at what will be the new province level. So what will it look like when New England, New York, and Maryland provinces become one province, and there are 28 schools? And how will we maintain the relationship between the provincial or the Society of Jesus and each of those individual schools? In preparation for that restructuring, which will happen over the next 10 years or so, many of our provinces have begun inter-province collaborations, where the leadership and the sponsoring governance structures have become to overlap provinces. So, New England and Maryland and New York have begun inter-province meetings where school heads gather, where teachers gather, and begin to address that question of creating a new culture, a new province culture, and a new school culture as those groups come together. We've been implementing new models and incorporating and collaborating with other networks, specifically the Cristo Rey network. There are 24 schools in the Cristo Rey network. 10 of them are sponsored by the Jesuits, but the others are sponsored by other religious communities that also do education in the U.S. And the newest element, I think, and Jeff Hausman is here and will do a presentation on the Jesuit Virtual Learning Academy, an opportunity to do networking, making use of technology, particularly the World Wide Web and social networking. An opportunity for teachers to stretch across the boundaries of states and perhaps even countries and perhaps even oceans to create a network of teachers working together in an environment that promotes this network of Jesuit schools and who we are as Jesuit schools. I think the challenge for us in North America is to recognize that we have many resources available to us. Our schools are really ultimately rich in resources. And the challenge I think Father General offers to us is a recognition that we have a responsibility, because of the richness of our resources, to reach out to schools outside of North America and to encourage those kinds of networks to continue to grow. So thank you for your time this morning.
So we are 44 delegates from South Asia, 43 coming from India, 1 from Nepal. If you look at South Asia, we have houses and these are the official residents and the countries. In Afghanistan, we have 3, 11 Jesuits, Bangladesh 1, 15 Jesuits. In Bhutan, we have presence Jesuits going there. No residents, but no staying Jesuits there. In India, 304 residents, 3,851 Jesuits. Nepal, official 4 houses, but we have more than that, 61 Jesuits. In Pakistan, 11 residents, 3 Jesuits. In Sri Lanka, 14 residents and 86 Jesuits. So we have total number of Jesuits in South Asia, 4,027. A note, if you see these countries, some of the things that will affect their presidential election, at least in the States, is focusing on outsourcing, that is focusing on India. How to handle terrorist camps is focusing on Pakistan, and the pullouts is focusing on Afghanistan. So you have a lot of activity there taking place in South Asia, and as an emerging economy, India is there in the list of attention. We have 164 primary and middle schools, high school 229, senior secondary schools 31, community colleges 10, technical institutions 40. We have about 40 colleges and around 18 teachers training. Total number of Jesuits involved in education is 706. Lay faculty 30,499. Catholic students, remember the Catholic population is only 2.5%, and so we have 65,072. That's roughly about 20%. And if we take the Christians, who are about 6,840, we come to about 22%. And the total number of students that we cater in English terms is 3,22,901. What is our context of education? We are a very small population in a multi-religious, multicultural country. And so for us, our schools are, in one sense, they denote a presence of this Catholic population. And so, because of our schools, the presence of Christians is acknowledged. Without our schools, we would not have a voice. So, our schools basically give us a voice because of its standards, because of its values. We see our education definitely it is at a different level, But for us, education is basically at the service of God's kingdom. That means preparations of students for the kingdom, focusing on the gospel values, focusing on faith formation and other aspects that we would like to do. And so one of the things is what we do in our schools, whether they are poor schools, rural schools, schools in the town, is a focus on how do we prepare better citizens so that we can have a better human society. 85% of our schools are aided schools. That means they are vernacular schools. Since they are aided, according to the state, they have different languages. So, take for example, in Maharashtra, it would be a Marathi medium school. In Gujarat, it would be a Gujarati medium school. So, we have different mediums there. And so, because our schools are in this vernacular medium, the poor and the lower, what we call lower middle class, are our basic clientele. We have schools in various forms. Some are very good, highly academic schools. There are schools which are basically also taking care for the first generation of learners, in that sense to eradicate illiteracy in our country. And we have different forms of education here to eradicate illiteracy. But what is basically, our schools are there to take care of the faith formation, to eradicate illiteracy, and also to promote standards in our education system. Basically, in all our schools, because we form a very small minority, we are giving preference for Catholics, and especially to build up the faith of the Catholics. So our schools become also in that sense developing true catechisms, developing the faith of the Catholics, and so at the service of the church. What is our educational strength? Every year we have 20 provinces and regions in South Asia. And each of these 20 provinces has a coordinator of education, and we meet every year, and then we take small steps, we evaluate them annually, whether the targets are fulfilled, and then we plan for educational trusts for the next year. So our movements are basically small steps, but in the right direction. Then we have what we call zonal network. We have 4 zones in South Asia. The South zone of 4 provinces, the West zone of 4 provinces, the North zone of 5 provinces, and the Central zone of 5 provinces. And so one of the things is we have seen how we can provinces can work together. The third thing is the meeting of the school core team, where I try to visit and we see at least once in 2 years and do an appraisal of our educational initiative and agree targets so that we are implementing what we decide. And then our other educational strength in all our schools, which is a very important priority for us, to ensure that Catholics are taken so that they can get the faith formation that they require. What are the main challenges? We are in a country in which, since we are a small minority, we also have fundamental Hindu groups, different groups. And so they do not make our jobs easy, especially when 85% of our schools are aided. So there's a lot of paperwork, governmental approval, bureaucratic roadblocks, and this in one sense saps the physical energy and the emotional energy of many of our principals. So there is a lot of difficulties that our principals face. Then because of this, sometimes long-term plannings cannot take place, and so when long-term planning does not take place, emergency, personal interest groups get a priority rather than the province policy of education. Since we are having a lot of Jesuits, and in some provinces, for a principal chair, there are maybe another 10. So we do not take so much interest in lay collaboration in sense of promoting to areas of as a principal, because there's still plenty of Jesuits there. That's one of our challenges, how to get that moving, how to foster collaboration. And there is what we call a lack of updating and innovation among the core team of our members. Finally, what are the new projects or what are we currently busy with? We are busy with, in one sense, Jesuit school accreditation and assessment. We have planned some benchmarks so that we can work together and attain those benchmarks. We are focusing on value education and catechism. Basically, we were not really happy with the content and the methodology, and so we are working in how do we develop effective strategies to achieve the desired outcome. And finally, we are also working with, this year we have had deficit rainfall, and for our economy, rainfall is very important and the concern. So we have this eco concerns and dialogue because if you see, we have a lot of people of different faiths. How do we work? How do we worship? How do we work together, collaborate together with people of different faith? And so, eco-sensitive values and education students for dialogue is the thrust for this in the current projects. Thank you very much.
Muy buenas tardes, un placer, mucho gusto saludarles a todos. Voy a hablar en español para que nos entienda Dios. También como soy el último, me doy también el lujo de explicarles algunas cosas más, como por ejemplo, explicarles que yo estoy representando al sector educativo de la Conferencia de Provinciales de América Latina. Esto es importante porque voy a contextualizar diciendo que nosotros trabajamos muy juntos las tres redes educativas que tenemos en el sector de provinciales de América Latina. Uno son las universidades, la otra red son Fe y Alegría, que son los colegios que trabajan en sectores pobres, básicamente, y la tercera red es Flaxi, que trabaja con los colegios tradicionales, como la mayoría de los que están aquí hoy día. Entonces son tres redes que, como les digo, trabajamos bastante juntas. Un contexto de América Latina con algunas cifras. Nosotros somos un continente que abarcamos como colegios en este minuto desde Miami, porque ahí está el Caribe, con el Colegio Belén de la República Dominicana, hasta el más austral que es en Chile, el Colegio de Puerto Montt. Somos 29 países, con 21.000 kilómetros, con una variedad grande de países que están en vías de desarrollo, como es Brasil, hasta países muy pobres como Haití, por otro lado. Tenemos algunos datos ahí que ustedes alcanzan a mirar de la distribución monetaria financiera de nuestros países en este minuto. Ahí tenemos un pequeño esquema de lo que les hablaba hace un momento, de las tres redes que trabajamos juntas en la Conferencia de Provinciales, las universidades, Fe y Alegría y Flaxi. Entre paréntesis, se encuentra entre nosotros también el representante de Fe y Alegría, el representante del padre Suñol, el padre Utsumi, que hoy día nos acompaña como director de toda la federación. Nos vamos a quedar una mirada más focalizada en Fe y Alegría y Flaxi, y luego finalmente una mirada más profunda a Flaxi, que son los colegios que yo estoy dirigiendo más directamente. Algunas diferencias para que se pueda entender entre lo que son los colegios de Flaxi y los de Fe y Alegría. Bueno, ahí en cifra ustedes se pueden dar cuenta de la primera, la fundación es mucho más antigua de todas maneras, Fe y Alegría. Se define Fe y Alegría como la Federación de Formación y Educación Popular y Promoción Social. Por otro lado, los colegios privados son los colegios que están asociados a Flaxi, que atienden a sectores medios, altos, y la mayoría son de propiedad de la compañía. En cambio, en Fe y Alegría hay colegios que en su mayoría están asociados a congregaciones de religiosas, de congregaciones femeninas. Fe y Alegría está ubicada en 20 países y Flaxi en 19 de los países latinoamericanos. Tenemos 4.000 instituciones más o menos, eso en estadísticas varía bastante, entre colegios de educación formal e educación no informal, centros comunitarios, en el caso de Fe y Alegría, y en el caso de Flaxi tenemos 95 colegios, como les decía, desde Miami, el Colegio Belén, donde está Pedro, hasta el colegio que está en Puerto Montt, en el sur de Chile, que es el colegio más austral. Fe y Alegría tiene un universo de cerca de 1 millón de alumnos, o de estudiantes, o de beneficiarios, y en el caso de los estudiantes de Flaxi son 133.000, según las últimas estadísticas de hace más o menos un mes. Profundizando un poco más en Fe y Alegría tiene un cuerpo fuerte en América Latina, pero también tiene en este minuto una obra en África, en el Chad de África, sumando los centros comunitarios con los centros escolares y otros más. Estamos hablando, como les decía, de 4.000 centros, con un gran número de funcionarios, participando en distintos programas. Esa es la visión que después tendremos alguna posibilidad de mirarla en un foco bien especial en algunos de los talleres que tendremos en la semana. Es una obra muy bonita, es grande, es lo más grande que tenemos, yo creo, en la compañía como educación en este minuto, ¿no? Es la ONG más grande de educación de la Compañía de Jesús, con una gran experiencia en colaboración y de trabajo en red. Flaxi es la organización más pequeña, tiene pocos años, tiene 19 países, 95 colegios. Están trabajando en este minuto, según las estadísticas también recientes, 266 jesuitas en distintas responsabilidades, con un staff de administración de 1.700 personas, 9.000 o 10.000 profesores académicos y, como les decía, 133.000 estudiantes. Interesante decir que nuestros colegios en América Latina, la mayoría son colegios que pertenecen a la Compañía de Jesús. Sin embargo, hay un porcentaje en Chile y en México que no son colegios de la Compañía, sino que son colegios asociados, es decir, de laicos, o que están asociados a la CBX, o son exalumnos, organizaciones que se han asociado en un convenio con la Compañía de Jesús para participar de su misión. Y en Argentina también hay algunos colegios parroquiales, así que no son de la compañía, pero que tienen relación con ella. Cuando hablamos de colegios coeducacionales, estamos hablando de mixtos, hombres y mujeres, y es un dato interesante porque hemos ido creciendo. Solamente quedan algunos países que no tienen colegios con mujeres, como sería el caso, por poner un ejemplo, los colegios tradicionales en Argentina, y creo que estaría por ahí, por los demás todos han ido dando pasos para ir transformándose en colegios de hombres y de mujeres coeducativos. Algunos desafíos que estamos trabajando ya, esto estoy hablando más bien del foco de Flaxi, es un esfuerzo muy importante cambiar de cultura, de pasar de una cultura muy individual a una cultura de colaboración. Esto internamente en cada país y cada vez más todavía entre provincias, ¿no? A través de distintas actividades que se han ido generando, sobre todo en los últimos años. Y esto nos ha ido constituyendo como un cuerpo consciente, visible, que tiene más fuerza y ojalá con mayor posibilidad de incidencia en nuestros países, contando que los números pequeños ya no tienen tampoco mayor impacto, los números grandes de todas maneras van produciendo más impacto en las sociedades internas. una educación intercultural. Nosotros, gracias a Dios, tenemos solamente 2 idiomas grandes, digamos, los que se hablan más, que son el portugués y el español, pero tenemos una gran variedad de culturas en el continente y es un desafío para nosotros la educación intercultural, todo el tema de la inclusión. También es un desafío el poder entrar decididamente al tema de las tecnologías, de la información. Nuestros países están en distintos niveles, evidentemente, por los desarrollos internos, pero es un desafío el poder estar a la altura por el nuevo tipo de alfabetización al que tienen que acceder nuestros alumnos si quieren estar también incidiendo en la sociedad del futuro. Tanto el inglés como las tecnologías son herramientas de apoyo, atributos muy importantes en la formación de nuestros chicos. También una manera, un trabajo importante como desafío, como la mayoría de ustedes, es poder mejorar nuestros modos de administración de nuestros colegios. Nosotros tenemos, como la mayoría de ustedes, una fuerte irrupción de laicos o normales, también les decimos, en los colegios. Los laicos hoy día están tomando cargos, responsabilidades que antes no tenían, por lo tanto tenemos que formar, por un lado, a los laicos en un modo, un estilo jesuita de atender los colegios, pero también para estar un poco a la altura de la tremenda competencia que tienen nuestros colegios, aprender a tener modos más modernos de administración. Estamos haciendo fuertes desafíos también de programas de intercambio y el uso de los lenguajes globales. Algunos trabajos que estamos haciendo fuertes, nosotros tenemos un esfuerzo grande y creo que eso podemos aportar mucho cuando nuestros estudiantes de Europa o de Estados Unidos van a nuestros países. Hacemos experiencias de formación, no solamente como anécdota social, sino que de formación social muy importante, ¿no? Y eso creo que es un aporte que les podemos ofrecer nosotros, lo hacemos seriamente. Estamos haciendo también un trabajo intersectorial bien interesante, no solamente, como les explicaba hace un minuto, con el tema del sector educativo de las 3 redes, sino que además asociamos las otras redes de la organización jesuita, como son los sectores sociales, los sectores de inclusión, como el SJR, el SJM, migrantes, jesuitas refugiados, sector
Alex, perdón, tiempo, tienes un minuto.
Me falta el último, y creo que es importante, que yo me extendí con más diapositivas, un trabajo bien interesante que estamos haciendo en Haití y con un sistema de calidad de la educación, poniendo estándares comunes con un sistema común. Son las 2 cosas que vamos a conocer después en el programa. Muchas gracias.
We still have 5 minutes for questions, so please, if anybody has a question.
I'm John Tan from White College Kowloon in Hong Kong. As I have been listening since the first speech this morning, I was struck by this direction of establishing global networking. The more specific question in my mind is whether we are going to move along this direction towards a federation kind of networking or a community kind of networking. Both have similarities such as common vision and mission, the conviction to share with network members. This kind of sharing can complement each other, and perfection is not a prerequisite for sharing. However, there are also differences between the federational style of networking and community kind of networking. I guess in a federation model, frequent regular contacts may not be necessary, and communication may be mainly done through regional representatives, while in a community model, regular contacts may be essential, and there may be multi-level regional and trans-regional communications. And also in terms of solidarity in sharing of resources, such as language expertise, especially expertise in the global language in an area where students and staff are not particularly strong in that language, essential for networking, or sharing of financial resources and exchanges, sharing in technology. I guess this kind of sharing may be essential in the community model, but maybe just optional in the federational model. The solidarity has an implication of the more resourceful members of the network helping the less resourceful. I'd be grateful if the panel or anyone from the floor can throw light on this issue. Thank you.
So let me say something. That's a very good question. I don't have the answer. I don't think that we all have the answer here. But I will say this. The Society of Jesus always had this experimental way to do things. So we had to begin doing small things together. That is the way local associations, local networks began. We hope that here in the colloquium we can make a few steps in that direction. Of course, having a clear understanding of what kind of network we want to be will be important. But we also hope that, again, small steps, some small projects together, some small programs together can be the beginning of that, and in the long run we can define better what kind of network we want to be, and we can at the same time clarify better. That's the way we had done it at the local and the regional levels, and we hope that we can do it also at the global level.
I'm Friedrich Pflüger, a Jesuit from Germany, and I'm representing Jesuit Refugee Service here at this conference. I've been the regional director of Eastern Africa the last 3 years. I just wanted to round up a little bit the picture because JRS is running hundreds of schools all over the world with hundreds of thousands of students. These schools are mainly in South Sudan, North Sudan, Chad, Central African Republic. They are in Nepal or in Thailand or in many other countries. And these schools operate under the most difficult situations because they are mainly camp schools or schools of refugee settlements. So they are operating under very poor circumstances, like makeshift schools, sometimes even under trees. But they are trying to do their best, and we have a lot of problems by financing all these kind of schools all over the world. And especially we have nearly no Jesuits working with these schools and supporting us in these efforts. So the Jesuits are very seldom to find in these environments. These schools, even when they are in very poor shape and very poor situations, they help the children to give them hope for their lives. And that is the main point. To give them hope that there is a life after the camp and that there might be a chance also after the camp. And these schools are safe environments for these children in the schools, mainly for the girls. Just to mention about the success of these schools, we had last year the statistics of South Sudan, where out of the 10 best schools in South Sudan, 6 were supported by JRS. That's just a bit to round up this picture.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me say something about this because this is really very important, and I'm glad that people are already thinking in the future, because the follow-up of the colloquium is the main important thing that we are really debating here. It's not the colloquium, it's the follow-up. So that's all of this is very good because it gives us the idea that we need to look beyond the colloquium. And in this particular case, the JRS is helping to look beyond our walls. We need to look beyond our walls and our small world. We are going to have in October in Chicago a meeting between the Jesuit networks working with the poor. Fe Alegría, Cristo Rey, JRS, Nativity, although Nativity is not a network anymore, but we are going to see if we can begin a new level of collaboration between these networks so that we can also provide a better education for all. But all of these remind us that our world is bigger than our small schools. Thank you.